That clip from Lawrence of Arabia is arguably one of the most famous cuts in film history. Why? What about a man blowing at a match, going to a sunrise, is so special to us? Well, to get that answer, we have to start with the film editor. Most films aren't shot in order. Some even start at the end. No matter the order though, once shooting is done, the film editor comes in. The editors then take all the shots from the movie and stitch them together to make a cohesive and compelling story. Beyond that, getting a simple answer for what an editor is seems impossible. Walter Murch, editor of Apocalypse Now and Godfather 3, compares film editors to dancers that cut in rhythm, which is why he only edits standing up. Alexander Payne, the director of Sideways and The Holdovers, considers editors a little differently.
I think successful editors are really sly politicians.
Well, whatever an editor is, it clearly is not simple. Let's go back to Lawrence of Arabia. Instead of wondering what makes the cut so great, let's ask why they made it. For that answer, I'll have Ann Coates, the editor of Lawrence of Arabia, explain.
We were in film in those days, so I think sometimes wonder if we've ever seen it the way we did if we were on digital like today, because I would have done the dissolve in the machine and we would never seen it as a direct cut.
Right.
But because it was film, it was cut together with the old Chinograph marks on it.
Yes, you heard that right. One of the best cuts in film history was made by accident. Okay, so this isn't an exact science, clearly, but that's why I'm making this video. I want to understand more about this crazy magic that makes films work. What makes a great edited film great? And on the other hand, what makes a badly edited film bad? What makes film editing so hard, and is there a trick to it? And lastly, ask the age-old question, can you really fix it in post? Asking what makes a film well edited is like asking what makes food good. You kind of just know, but how? How do we know this? Are we just born with the knowledge to identify good pacing and emotional beats? Well, yes, we kind of are. Beyond editing, Walter Murch actually wrote a book called In the Blink of an Eye, which talks about, among many things, how humans are actually accustomed to edits from blinking. Here's Murch explaining it.
Look at me. Now, look at that lamp. Now, you're looking at the lamp, now look at me again. Do you see what you did? And she said, no. He said, you blinked when you went from me to the lamp and the lamp back to me. In that process, you blinked. That's what the cut is.
Murch used this tactic when he edited the movie The Conversation, starring Gene Hackman. He noticed after Gene Hackman had finished a thought or an action, he would blink. This became an edit point for Murch, helping him cut more naturally. So now we know why we like certain cuts and the rhythm behind it. But there's a lot more that goes into great editing than just using the blink. Take Whiplash, one of my all-time favorite movies, and the winner of the Best Editing Award at the 2015 Oscars. But why did it win? Was it because of the pacing, the rhythm, the emotion? Maybe. What if I told you that some filmmakers just make movies for editing? This is Tom Cross, the editor of Whiplash, talking about that very sensation.
He knew he wanted to make a movie that would be an editor's showcase. He wanted to tell his story with a certain level of suspense and tension and manic energy, and he knew he wanted to illustrate that through the film editing. He knew that from the beginning.
This practice of directors specifically making movies for the edit has been around a lot longer than you might think. Meet Krzysztof Kieślowski, a Polish filmmaker from the 1960s who focused more on the editing of his movies than he did on the script or the shots. In fact, Kieślowski would play so much with his edits that he would come up with numerous different endings for his movies. These kind of directors make editors' jobs so much easier when they have the edit in mind. Tom Cross and Whiplash director Damien Chazelle enhanced each other by having a fully fledged idea together for what the edit should look like. On the contrary, a director who doesn't have a vision of what they want can lead to bad editing. Let's look at another Oscar winner of the editing category, Bohemian Rhapsody. Bohemian Rhapsody is an example of a badly cut movie. That may be confusing to some of you given that it won the Oscar for editing. Here's the thing about the Oscars, they can be wrong.
Moonlight, Best Picture.
Let's focus on one scene in Bohemian Rhapsody that is specifically horrible. This is a dialogue scene between Queen and their soon-to-be manager that is cut like an action fight scene but faster. There are multiple continuity breaks that are so jarring it takes you out of the scene, and there's one cut even that I'm just genuinely shocked they left this in the movie.
So this is Queen.
That might not seem like a bad cut until you remember there are 4 members of Queen. And how many did they show? I'm not going to dive too deep into this because it's just one of many badly cut scenes in the movie, but here's the question. Is this the editor's fault? I would argue no. Bohemian Rhapsody had a notoriously tough production, with director Bryan Singer being fired with almost 2/3 of the movie already finished. This type of production trouble can affect editing terribly and can cause scenes like this where the editor probably didn't have all the shots he needed to make this more coherent. As with Whiplash and Kieslowski's movies, the relationship between the director and the editor was vital for how those turned out. Murch actually touches upon this relationship in his book as well, comparing them to dreamers and listeners, with directors being the dreamers and the editors being the listeners. The dreamer would instigate a conversation with an idea, and the listener would imagine sequences from the idea. So in the case of Bohemian Rhapsody, if the dreamer's vision is unclear, what was there to listen to?
I mean, I went with a very clear thought in my head that it's not my movie. It's my predecessor's movie. I have to try and understand what it is that he was doing and make it to be part of that whole, because I can't get to shoot the whole thing.
Let's take a scene from Whiplash. This scene has 36 cuts comprising of a master shot, 2 medium shots, and 2 close-ups for a total of 5 setups. Now imagine you have 2 takes for every setup. Okay, only 10, not too bad. But here's the kicker. There are over 3 million ways to put those 10 shots in order. Luckily for us, Walter Murch dealt with this problem with his 6 rules. He divided the importance of these rules like a pie chart, with each getting a percentage. Emotion is Murch's most important rule. He considers emotion in a shot more than any other factor.
At the top, the most difficult to quantify, which is that transition from one shot to the next made you feel a certain way. It had an emotion with it. There was an emotional value to it, and that emotion was the correct one for that place in the film.
His next 2 rules are connected to his first. Once you start cutting with emotion, it leads the story and helps you find your rhythm.
And so these 3 levels of emotion and story, which is to say logic, and rhythm, which is a kind of instinctual thing, echo these 3 different layers of the brain.
Beyond our main 3 rules dominating most of the percentage, we then have eye trace, which is the area our eyes are looking at in a shot compared to the next one. 2D plane of screen is basically the 180-degree rule. This means if you're looking at a couple from their left side, your next cut shouldn't be from the right. And lastly, and least importantly, 3D space, which Murch describes as where people are in the room in relation to one another. Now that we roughly know what to prioritize in editing, let's look back at this scene with a different lens. We start with a wide shot showing both actors. We can see Andrew, played by Miles Teller, nervous, and Fletcher, played by J.K. Simmons, relaxed, even cocky. When the conversation starts, we go through each line, cutting between the characters, and we start to feel a rhythm. When Fletcher says something that evokes an emotion in Andrew, we cut to Andrew. When we get to the meat of the conversation, when the emotion is at its highest, we cut to the close-ups. We want to see the faces. This is the emotion. This is what we want. This is an example of fantastic editing that can easily be screwed up. Yes, Murch's rules did play a part in this scene, but at the end of the day, they're just guidelines. Tom Cross didn't cut that scene following a chart. He got good at editing by editing. That's the only way.
My biggest advice is the same every time anybody asks me that question. You have to just do it. You have to say, okay, my goal is to be a big-time editor. What can I cut?
But now that we know how to edit, what about when we shouldn't? Yorgos Mavroparidis, the editor of Poor Things and most recently Kinds of Kindness, says not cutting is one of his biggest advantages when editing.
If you cut a lot, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't contain the code of the shot as the director imagines for you to edit in a proper manner without destroying the situation somehow.
Murch talks about this as well, even saying not cutting is harder. He even compares editors who overcut to tour guides who constantly point things out. Martin Scorsese seconds this. Let the audience explore your film and not have to be told what to see. Faster editing and more cuts doesn't mean better. It can actually make it worse.
I'm afraid of is the tendency for everything to go by quickly. And I'm afraid of what it does to the culture. A sense of consuming something and throwing it away, as opposed to being enveloped with something. Taking the time to see and experience time in a different way.
With all that being said, this doesn't mean don't cut, just that the best editors know how to do more with less. So, when you have to make an edit, make it a good one. Thelma Shoemaker, the editor of Scorsese's movies since 1967, knows how to do that. Since working together, Shoemaker and Scorsese have become trendsetters in the editing world. Instead of hiding the roughness of their cuts, they would expose them. This against the grain mentality bleeds into their philosophy about continuity editing. Continuity in films, for those who don't know, is the matching of two shots to mask the edit, making it seem fluid. For beginning editors and filmmakers, continuity seems paramount. However, Shoemaker, Scorsese, and my former community college professor agree that editors and filmmakers alike should have the mindset of fuck continuity. Why? Because we as an audience simply don't care. Let's look at this scene from The Irishman.
Hello? Hello? Joe? It's
Frank.
There's a jump cut that's pretty jarring. I'll have Shoemaker explain why she made it.
And there's a jump cut there, which you normally are not supposed to do. But the take in which De Niro hears her voice on the phone, she says hello, was so perfect. And then the take where he actually carries out the whole conversation with her was from another take. And we tried to morph it. We can do that sometimes. We can make it look as if there isn't a cut. But we finally gave up, and Marty said, just leave it as a jump cut. So we did.
These kind of mistakes aren't big deals. Shoemaker, Murch, Scorsese, and tons of other successful editors and directors value the acting and the emotion a whole lot more than a jump cut or even a cigar disappearing. We'll fix it in post is a common phrase said on set when something goes wrong, but there isn't enough time or enough money to deal with it right then. This means it's now the editor's problem. Now, believe it or not, some things are unfixable. Is your shot out of focus? Is it overexposed? You're SOL. However, the saying exists for a reason, so what can editors do? The biggest contribution editors can make is to arrive with a fresh perspective. The director has been shooting and conceptualizing the film for so long in such a specific manner that they can only view it in that way. This is why Walter Murch advises editors to never visit the set, as it can compromise the project's freshness. This was the approach that editor Paul Hirsch applied to Ferris Bueller, the classic John Hughes movie. Now beloved, it was once a disjointed mess. Test audiences disliked the nearly 3-hour original cut, stating that some scenes were tedious, especially the now beloved museum scene. Beyond shortening the film, the only other adjustment Hirsch made was rearranging the sequence of the movie. Instead of placing the museum scene as the last scene before Ferris has to go home, Hirsch substituted it with the parade scene. Swapping scenes instead of cutting them out relates to a point Murch makes regarding audience testing. He compares editors and test audiences to doctors and patients. If you have patients coming in saying they have pain in their elbow, a bad doctor and a bad editor will only focus on the elbow, whereas a good doctor and a good editor will look beyond and see if another part of the body is causing the pain. People didn't like the museum scene not because it was bad, but because it didn't fit in the original order. This is what makes Hirsch such an exceptional editor. Instead of throwing away his puzzle pieces, he just put them in a place where they made more sense. Editors do a lot of things. Beyond being dancers and politicians, they're listeners, maybe dreamers, some cut, some don't. You can give 30 editors the same footage and you're gonna get 30 different movies. That's why editing is so hard. Mastering is almost impossible. Sure, Walter Murch and Thelma Shoemaker have reached that level, but that capability is few and far between. A great director is also needed to become a great editor. Shoemaker has Scorsese, and Murch had Coppola. That is the most important relationship in the movie-making process. When the two are in sync, magic happens. When they're not, well, something happens. But whether a great director or not, the editor's responsibilities remain the same. Establish an interesting, coherent rhythm of emotion and thought on the tiniest and largest scales that allows the audience to trust themselves to the film and, by extension, you.